Hi, good morning. My name is Chris Fenton. I am the master technician and the technical trainer for Melco. So what we are going to cover today is the rotary hook replacement and also the cutter replacement for the Melco Bravo, the EMT16, and the EMT16 Plus. Those are the three models of the Melco machine that have what is called the S95 rotary hook. For people that have EMT16 and EMT16 pluses, it's very easy to identify because the machine appearances and things are totally different. If you have a Bravo and you are a little confused on which model you have, all S95 machines have longer take-up levers on them. So for like the Amaya red and white, the XT and the XTS machines, the take-up levers just protrude out of the cover very slightly compared to the long take-up lever machines where that protrudes out of the cover a pretty good distance. So that would be a visual representation that you could check to see what type of rotary hook or what type of machine you have. If you do need to replace your rotary hook on what would be the Amaya red and white, the XT and the XTS, you can go to www.melco-service.com. There will be some thumbnails. Choose your machine type and then go to the technical manual, and there is a step-by-step instruction in the technical manual for rotary hook replacement for those types of machine. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to work on this machine right here today. And some of the symptoms of a faulty rotary hook or a faulty cutter. Of course, faulty cutter would be mistrims. That would be on all needle positions. Thread breaking on all needle positions as well for a damaged rotary hook. If you're dealing with a needle-specific thread breaking issue, it's probably not related to the rotary hook and or the cutter. You've got to look for items that are common to all 16 needles. So we have some examples sitting here out on the bench. Oh, perfect. So what's unique to Melco is our rotary hooks are actually a two-piece assembly. You have this assembly right here, which is called the collar. This is what actually attaches to what is called the bobbin shaft of the lower arm of the machine. This stays attached to the machine, and you are able to remove the rotary hook from this collar and just replace the rotary hook and or just replace the cutter. Now, what's really nice about this is on this collar, way down like right here, there is a indexing pin. Now, this indexing pin interfaces with a corresponding cutout on the rotary hook itself. So as long as the rotational position of this collar is not changed on the embroidery machine, you can take your old rotary hook out, install your new rotary hook, and it goes back to the exact same position as the old rotary hook. So you can replace a rotary hook without having to do hook timing. Very, very, very cool setup. There is also a, coming in on the back side of the collar right here, there is a set screw that protrudes out of this hole. And that set screw makes contact with the back of the flange on the rotary hook. that sets the depth of your rotary hook in and out. So again, as long as we don't mess with anything on this collar, we are not going to mess up hook timing at all when we go to replace a rotary hook. So our first step in replacing the rotary hook is we need to go ahead and remove the needle plate off of the machine. This is your standard metric Allen wrench set that comes with all machines in the operator's manual or operator's kits. And the needle plate screws are 2.5 millimeters. So if we could go to this camera over my shoulder, Nate.
Wrong one, sorry.
Right here is one of the screws that attaches the needle plate to the machine. There's a corresponding one right on the other side right here. So we're going to go ahead and remove these two screws. One trick when you're going to crack these rotary hook, these needle plate screws loose for the first time, use the bent end of the Allen wrench. You get better leverage with having the long end sticking out as a handle.
If they are still having trouble, the gentleman that was the trainer before I was taught me to actually stick the end of the handle back into the case and use the whole case for leverage too.
Yes. So we've got our two needle plate screws removed, and now we just lift our needle plate off of the machine. Our next removal is going to be this rotary hook cover here on the bottom. You do not have to remove these screws all the way because this cover is slotted on the end. Now these are two little button head Allen screws, one on the right, one on the left, and this is going to take your 2 millimeter Allen wrench. So again, I'm using the bent end and I'm just unthreading these a couple turns. And now I am able to remove this cover off of the machine. Now, the final item that we need to remove is what is called the rotary hook retaining finger. On a rotary hook, if you'll notice this rotary hook that I have here, the portion where the bobbin goes in, which is called the inner basket, without having the retaining finger, you'll notice that I can spin that inner basket freely. Well, this notch cut right here is the pocket for the rotary hook retaining finger. So now if we take a look at our hook that is still on the machine, you'll notice that I cannot spin that inner basket because the retaining finger is holding the inner basket in the correct position. When we go to reinstall our new hook, there is a setting for this retaining finger. We can't just put this retaining finger on, push it all the way back against the rotary hook, and the machine's going to sew. Because the bobbin actually feeds between the retaining finger and the rotary hook. So if we have the gap between the retaining finger and the rotary hook incorrect, we're going to restrict bobbin flow, which could cause bird nesting, thread breaks, and mistrims. So we're going to come over here to the right side of the arm, and we have two little button head Allen screws right here. They are what hold the rotary hook retaining finger to the neck of the machine. These are, again, 2 millimeters, and I'm going to start with the bent end again just so that I get better leverage, and I am able to get both of these screws loose. Once I got them loose, then I will go to use the long end to remove both of these button head Allen screws. And now our retaining finger is uninstalled off of the machine. So again, to show you, if you remember when I had the retaining finger on, I could not spin that inner basket. Now watch.
Hey, Chris, one of the questions that we just got was, how often should a hook be changed?
Good question. If you are doing your proper rotary hook maintenance and you have not had a substantial amount of needle breaks on the machine, you can get a great life expectancy out of a rotary hook. If you start having issues, needle breaks, thread breaks, and through Melco Tech, they have had you check other items. This is probably going to be your next step.
So speaking as a user, I've had my machine for forever and a day, and I've yet to replace my hook. I have had to retime it because I did really dumb things, but that didn't have this collar, so I'm kind of excited about this collar.
Yeah, this collar makes replacing a rotary hook very, very simple compared to the Maya red and white XT and XTS. So now that we have got full access to this rotary hook, on this collar, and we're going to take a look at the side view, you have two inboard Allen set screws. We do not touch these set screws because these two inboard ones are what attach the collar to the shaft. So if we loosen up the two inboards, we are now going to be able to rotate this collar independently of the shaft. We've messed up hook timing. So on the larger part of the collar, there are 3 set screws. 1, 2, 3. Those are the 3 set screws that we need to loosen so that we can take our existing rotary hook out of the collar. Now, what is nice is I can access all 3 of these set screws, and I don't even have to do anything with the software. I don't have to rotate the rotary hook. I don't need to do anything. So one is when you're at the head up position. One is right here at about the, I guess that would be about the 3 o'clock position. We come over here, we have one at about the 11 o'clock position. And then we've got one coming in on the bottom at roughly about the 6 o'clock position. And again, I only back those set screws off about 2 rotations, because I don't need to take them all the way out. Now with those 3 set screws loose, in theory and hopefully in actuality, the rotary hook now removes out of the collar of the machine. Now, Nate, if we could zoom in right here real quick.
Whoa, sorry guys.
You can see this collar doesn't move, and it is still tight to the embroidery machine. Because we did not loosen this collar itself, our new rotary hook is going to slide right in, and we will be in the exact same position. So now that we've got our rotary hook off, couple different scenarios I wanted to discuss with you. If you're having just a trimming issue, you can replace the cutter on the rotary hook independent. You don't have to buy an entire rotary hook assembly to buy a cutter assembly. Melco does offer the cutter assembly. The part number is a 34666. Nate, we can stay on that one for a second if again. Yeah, because there's a couple things I'd like to show. So again, 34666. You can order a cutter kit. The cutter kit comes with the cutting blade itself, 2 screws, a screwdriver, and a little tube of thread locker or Loctite. So I'm going to go ahead and show this cutter to you straight on. And now we're going to come right here, and I kind of want to explain to you how this works. So this slot right here is what's called the selector. So not to get too in depth on you, but there's 3 threads under a needle plate. 2 we want to cut, 1 we don't. So the 1 we don't slides into here. The 2 we do slides into this area, and that's what makes the cut. Now, on this particular cutter, there are 2 things that are wrong with it that are causing it to be non-functional. These 2 tabs are bent independently of each other. They should be at the same level. And this distance right here is way too wide, which in turn is making this distance right here way too narrow.
So what does that do?
This would be most likely a slingshot, where when you go to trim, the thread snaps up out of the needle eye.
Okay.
So these cutters are actually pretty reliable. The biggest thing that I have found that causes cutter issues, and I'm notorious myself for doing it, I either A, forget to put the bobbin back in and I create a bird's nest, or I forget to put my pinch lever back down after I'm fixing a thread break and I create a bird's nest.
So does a bird's nest itself cause that issue, or is it the
it's the
bummer,
removal
I got
of
one,
the
and
bird's
I'm gonna
nest?
jerk that bird's nest out of there.
So if you get your bird's nest and you have it, you look underneath and you see all kinds of colored thread right around in the rotary hook here, and you just grab your hoop and decide to yank your hoop out, you have now disformed this cutting blade.
And you do that because you're angry because you just
Exactly.
gave yourself a bird's nest. Yeah, okay.
With the way that this machine is designed, though, if I have my needle plate on, it's not very hard for me to come straight in right here with some scissors and cut the colored thread loose before I take the garment off of the machine. That is going to save you and save this cutter majority of the time. So if you do order your cutter kit, I'm going to show you real quickly. Can we go to that close-up again?
Yeah. Or you want there?
Yeah, right here would work.
Whoa, then you move.
Oh, okay, well then I'll go right here. We have 2 mounting screws for this cutter. We do provide you with replacement screws because it's very easy to lose these screws. So I'm going to remove the first screw. And I'm going to come back over my bench here for a second just to be safe.
Yeah, it's really tiny. Look at that thing. It's tiny.
I don't even know if you can.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. And then now I'm going to come to my second screw.
Don't sneeze.
And now the cutter is removed from the rotary hook. And to install your new cutter, you have this rectangle cutout right here, and you have got this screw right here. Just index those guys back up and replace your 2 screws, and you have replaced a cutter.
When do you add the lock?
The Loctite would be added now.
Pay no attention to all the cables in the background. It's just connecting all the machines and computers to the cameras.
And as I've gotten older, my eyes are not what they used to be. So getting this little black screw started back in here. So once I get the first screw started, I'm not going to get it completely tight until I get the second screw started. Once I get both of these screws started, then I will do my final tightening. Now again, at this time, you would put a little bit of the Loctite on these black screws. Just a teeny tiny bit though. You don't need to get over aggressive, I guess you would say, with the Loctite. What could happen if you use too much Loctite is that Loctite could get into the inner portion of the rotary hook and could cause you to have some thread breaking issues with the rotary hook. Okay, we have now installed our cutter back onto the rotary hook. And this rotary hook is able to be installed into the machine. Now, I don't remember the part number off the top of my head, but you can order this whole entire assembly as well. With the new hook and the cutter. Most replacement parts can be ordered off of www.shopmelco.com. So we now have replaced our cutter. Once a cutter has been disformed as bad as this one has, pretty much if any kind of damage happens to this cutter, there's no saving it. You're better off to just replace.
We the users don't have the finesse to get it back into place.
No, me, technician, doesn't have the finesse to get it back into place. So now, new rotary hook, we're going to install it back onto the machine. If you remember off of that demo hook I showed you, we've got a guide pin right here. And then we've got a corresponding cutout on the rotary hook. So all you've got to do is line up that guide pin and that cutout in the rotary hook, and the hook slides right back onto position. You're going to slide the hook back till you hear it hit, and it won't go back any farther. And now we are just going to retighten the 3 screws on the outboard or closest to the rotary hook. Remember, you don't want to touch the 2 that are inboard or closer to the back of the machine, because then you've messed up hook timing. Okay, we now have our new rotary hook installed, but we still have this guy that we need to worry about, our rotary hook retaining finger. As you can see right now, because I don't have that rotary hook retaining finger installed, I can spin the inner basket of the rotary hook freely. That's not good. You're going to get needle breaks when you have that. So on the rotary hook again, and Nate, if we could get a close-up right here.
Okay, give me a second. Okay, stay there.
Okay. All right, perfect. There is a notch cut in this rotary hook right here. That is where the retaining finger needs to ride in the rotary hook.
And that needs to be
And that needs to be at the 12 o'clock position. Another way that you can determine that is you've got this little clip relief right here in the rotary hook. It's like a backward C. That should be at the 3 o'clock position. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our retaining finger and we're just going to put it on to where it just engages with the rotary hook to keep that center section from spinning. Once we get it on there, then we are going to take this gauge that I have that is also sent in the operator's kits of all machines, and we're going to set the depth of this finger going into the rotary hook. Now, this retaining finger can come out of adjustment. I've got a couple theories on how I think it comes out of adjustment. When you are installing a garment that is hooped on the machine, it's very easy to hit that right here when you're sliding it on. You come in low, you're trying to slide, get it into the hoop arms correctly. So
And we're in a hurry, so we're not
so you
completely paying
might
attention.
exactly. So you might hit the face of this and push that guy in too far. So I think that could be one of the causes that could be contributing to the rotary hook retaining fingers not being set correctly. So in your operator's kit again, you have this little gauge. It's a little flat piece of sheet metal and it has a little tail coming off the end. Now on yours, that little tail's not going to be bent at a 45-degree angle. I've done that just because it makes it easier to use. So Nate, if we could get real good shot right here on the front side of the rotary hook, nice and close.
Like that, or you want me to come around a little?
Can you come around just a little bit?
Maybe. Move everything.
Nope, that's all right. We'll make it work. Perfect. I think that'll work.
Come back.
Perfect. So this little tab right here is sliding in that little cutout I showed you and in between the finger. So that is setting the depth of the rotary hook retaining finger. There's also one more setting, is that the rotary hook retaining finger either needs to be flush or lower than the rotary hook itself. So I'm going to go ahead and get this tight real quick, and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so as you can see, that gauge, I have just a little bit of drag. If you have to really scrape that out of there, you've got it too tight, and you could be introducing scratches in this area, which is where the bobbin comes through, so you could be introducing a thread break. Right here is what I'm talking about, is if I run my finger over where I just put that retaining finger, it's flush with the rotary hook. If the retaining finger is higher than the rotary hook, it's going to cause the machine to make a ticking noise. If the retaining finger is higher than the rotary hook, it causes the machine while it's sewing to make a ticking noise. What I believe is caused from is the way that the thread dynamics work under the needle plate and the way the thread is cast off of the hook. It catches the top of that finger and makes that ticking noise. So at this point right now, our rotary hook is reinstalled. We haven't messed with the rotary hook timing, which is the rotational position of the rotary hook. And we haven't messed with the in and out position of the rotary hook because that's all controlled by the collar, which is still attached to the embroidery machine. And we did not mess with any of the settings on the collar. So at this time, we'll go ahead and reinstall our hook cover again. And our final installation will be the needle plate. Now, every time you take a needle plate on and off of a machine, you should recenter the needle plate.
Why? Why?
There is left and right play in this needle plate. And we want to make sure that our needle is going down through the center of the needle plate hole. If we're not going down through the center of the needle plate hole, almost every garment you sew, you get a little bit of needle deflection, which is the needle going left, right, front, back, or whatever it may be. And we could introduce needle strikes to the needle plate hole, which in turn could cause us thread breaks and needle breaks. So again, I am just getting that needle plate on snug, not loose, not tight, just snug. And you'll notice, look how much play I've got in that needle plate. Quite a bit. So I'm gonna, since we're on needle 1, I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna dethread needle 1. I'm going to engage my emergency stop, which is the red button at the bottom of the user interface. Okay. Up inside the casting of the machine, right above where you attach the hoop arms, there is access to a shaft that runs all the way from the front of the machine to the back of the machine.
You're going to have to shift this shoulder out of the way, and then they can see it. So let me get to that, and they can see it. So there's the shaft.
So here's the shaft. All I'm going to do is spin that shaft, and that is going to bring my needle down into the needle plate hole. So while I've got the needle down, now I move my needle plate until my needle is going right down through the center of the needle plate hole. And I tighten my needle plate. Now I have guaranteed that my needle is in the center of the needle plate hole. So now I'm just going to release my emergency stop. The machine automatically took itself back to the head up position. And I have now installed a new rotary hook and or a new cutter on. Again, I want to make sure that we make this clear. It's the Melco Bravo, the EMT 16, and the EMT 16 Plus. This rotary hook that we have just installed is what's called the S95. Those models that I just listed are the only models that have the S95 rotary hook. Our Amaya Red and White XT and XTS have a different rotary hook, and the process for replacing it is not nearly as simple as what it is on this machine. So my final test that I want to do is, hopefully you guys have one of these Melco bobbin tension gauges. Part number for that is a 34746. Most of us were trained to do our bobbin tension as a yo-yo test. I really like this gauge because I could set a yo-yo test. Nate could do the yo-yo test. Other people could do the yo-yo test, and we're all going to be a little bit different.
Well, not only that, but the yo-yo test depends on the weight of the bobbin.
Bobbin.
The weight of the bobbin depends on how much thread is on it.
So we're going to pull, just like we do the yo-yo test, we take our bobbin thread out of the pigtail, and the bobbin case just snaps into the gauge. We go under the bottom roller, over the top of the top roller, and then through this guide. Now, the harder I pull this, I can make this gauge read whatever the heck I want. So if I pull real slow, I'm at about 200, 180. If I pull real fast, I make it 300. So what I have started to do when I'm checking my bobbin tension is I will pull this thread and then just hold it with my finger. Wherever the red needle stops moving, which is at 100 on this one, that's my bobbin tension. So I'm going to bump this bobbin tension up a little bit. That's a little too loose for our spec. We would like to be about 180. So again, it's using the same screw that you'd use normally to set your bobbin tension. I'm going to snug that up a little bit. I am going to pull. I'm going to pin. And wherever that red needle stops moving is where your bobbin tension is. So we are at about 180, 190. That's where I would like to run my bobbin tension. And I'm going to restring my bobbin thread through the pigtail and install it in the rotary hook.
So another question that we just got is, can this hook be retrofitted to earlier models of a Bravo?
It cannot.
There
is no path for that to happen.
Okay.
So a final check, again, making sure that we have our retaining finger in correctly to the rotary hook, is when I snap my bobbin in, that pigtail or that curly cue should be at the 12 o'clock position. So if I snap my bobbin case in and my pigtail or my curly cue is at the 3 o'clock, the 6 o'clock, the 9 o'clock, or whatever, that tells me that I don't have the retaining finger installed into the rotary hook in the correct position. So replacing a rotary hook on these three models of machines, very, very easy. To go back what Nate said, your maintenance routine has a lot to do with how long a rotary hook's going to last. Our software programs do give you a prompt that tell you to lube the rotary hook. I am promptly do it every morning before I start sewing. Our timer is 2 million stitches. 200,000.
Yeah, and it's based on a shop that's running 400,000 stitches a day.
Yeah,
so if you're really cranking in the morning and then after lunch.
Yep. So keep them rotary hooks lubricated. That's going to extend the life of them tremendously. Again, we discussed the cutter. If you pull a Chris and you forget to put the bobbin case in before you go to sew, or you forget to put the pinch lever down, make sure you come into this area of the machine, cut all that colored thread out before you yank the garment off of the machine. That's going to extend the life of these cutters tremendously as well. Bobbin tension, very critical to the functionality of the machines. Every time you replace a bobbin, you need to check the tension. They're all wound a little bit different. They have different drag on them, things of that nature. So every time you replace a bobbin, check your bobbin tension.
Also, just make sure that you clean out the spring, because if you're tightening it down because it's loose and it's actually because there's a piece of lint
Or something, correct,
or
yep.
something propping open that tension spring, you're not going to do yourself any favor, and then when that lint finally lets go, it's going to snap down on your thread. So just clean out your bobbin case.
So everything you need to replace the rotary hook, all of these items come in the operator's kit of the embroidery machine. So you don't need anything special. Again, if you would like to do a follow-up on this, I believe this will be recorded and it'll be available. You also can go to the technical manual for this type or your type of machine. And we have done a very good, I believe, a very good part replacement instruction for the rotary hook in there as well. So thank you very much for your time. Everybody have a good Wednesday, and we will see you next time.